Israel has taken another step toward annexing the occupied West Bank, approving the registration of Palestinian land as state land. It follows a decision that makes it easier for settlers to seize Palestinian property. So, what are the implications of Israel's ongoing land grab? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Rishaad. Salamat. Israel appears to be racing against time to tighten its grip on the occupied West Bank. Last week, its security cabinet approved a move that makes it easier for settlers to buy land there, repealing decades-old laws and regulations. This week, the Israeli government went a step further. It approved a proposal to reactivate land registration in the area for the first time since 1967. The move paves the way for Israel to gain ownership of vast swathes of land Palestinians hoped would have been part of their future state. So what's triggering this accelerated confiscation of Palestinian land, and could it be a recipe for renewed violence? We'll talk to our guests in a moment, but first, this report from Michael Apple.
Israeli forces demolish Palestinian homes on the outskirts of occupied East Jerusalem. Violent scenes like these are common. Recently, Israel expedited plans to complete land registration in occupied East Jerusalem, and now it's broadened these plans across the occupied West Bank for the first time since 1967. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government has allocated an initial $80 million to the registration process until 2030.
This is a move of sovereignty, a move of annexation.
The Israeli anti-settlement group Peace Now says the move closes the door for Palestinians to claim ownership of their lands. It will see the massive dispossession of Palestinian land once it's registered as so-called Israeli state land, and that this further complicates any possibility of a two-state political settlement being reached in the future.
Palestinians will be sent to prove ownership in a way that they will never be able to do, and this way Israel might take over 83% of the Area C, which is about half of the West Bank.
The Palestinian Authority rejects the move.
So we're seeing this as an attempt to destroy and to destruct any positive effort toward stability, peace and security in the region.
The West Bank, occupied by Israel since 1967, has three areas of administration: A, B, and C. The 1990s Oslo Accords granted Palestinians limited governing authority in Area A and partial authority in Area B, while Area C, the largest, remained under full Israeli control. A new Israeli cabinet decision to restart land registration, targeting 15% of Area C, has set off alarm bells. The latest development follows swiftly off the back of additional security cabinet approvals that further expand and entrench Israel's grip over the occupied West Bank.
Donald J. Trump.
Later this week, US President Donald Trump is due to host several world leaders for the first meeting of his Board of Peace, which is to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza. Experts question whether this platform could be the only avenue left for Israel's critics to call on Washington to halt what they say amounts to the annexation of the Palestinian territory, something Trump keeps saying he'll never allow. Michael Apple, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests from occupied East Jerusalem. We're joined by Mohammad Dahleh, a human rights lawyer who specializes in the Israeli and Palestinian legal systems. In West Jerusalem is Barak, a former aide to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and founder of the KEEVOON research strategy and communications company. And in Lancaster in the UK is Simon Mabon, a professor of Middle East and international politics at Lancaster University. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's start off, first of all, with you, Mitchell, and I want you to all answer the same question. It is, what are your respective positions as to what's been happening?
Well, it looks pretty clear. I mean, you said it in your intro article.
This is in Area C. Area C is, first of all, fully controlled by Israel, civilian and military. This is something that has to do with Area C, which again is under Israeli control. So I'm not sure the excitement that's taking place in the world that there's a land grab going on, because Area C belongs, Israel controls it at this point. The problem is, though, is that the Palestinian Authority has been registering land in Area C in violation of the Oslo Accords and agreements with Israel. So Israel had to take the step, from what I understand, or certainly that was what the cabinet decision said, in order to facilitate land registration on some of the areas that are not registered. It is a process which will take many, many years. In fact, even possibly decades to do, in order to find that land and register it. But had the Palestinian Authority not violated the Oslo Accords, I don't think this would have happened.
Mohammed.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a move to annex the land, not the people. Israel doesn't have the courage, actually, to annex the entire territory with the entire population. Israel is interested only in the lands in Area C, and this is a step towards registering those lands as what they call state land. And when they say state land, they don't obviously mean public lands for all the inhabitants of the West Bank, including the Palestinians. State lands are only for settlers and for settlement activities and for settlement expansion. This is actually the last nail, if you wish, in the coffin of the peace process in the Oslo Accords. There is no meaning anymore to the hope of the Palestinians of establishing a Palestinian state in the occupied West Bank or in the occupied territories. Israel is behaving as if those lands are national lands or lands that belong to the Jewish people. It's a total expression of the Jewish supremacy that Israel is behaving inside the Green Line and, of course, in the West Bank and the occupied territory. Once those lands are registered the way they are, and if you take this decision in conjunction with the other decisions that were taken in the past week, this actually means that the Palestinians will be suffocated in Area A and B. And afterwards, Palestinians will be actually ethnically cleansed. Now they are being ethnically cleansed from Area C. The continuation of this, that the Palestinians in Area A and B won't see any hope in living in those areas, which is basically driving those people outside of the occupied territories, so that maybe one day Israel can totally annex the entire West Bank with the remaining population when the population is diluted. This is a process of very similar to what's happening in Gaza, if you wish, but in different means. Now it's not a full-fledged war. It's a process of enacting new military orders. The idea that the Israeli military commander and that the Israeli cabinet is capable of enacting this legislation in the West Bank and of grabbing more lands in the area that was supposed under the Oslo agreements to be, after 5 years, the land for the Palestinian state is by itself appalling.
And to you, Simon.
Yeah, I think it's a deeply worrying moment, and this anxiety has been shared by leaders around the world. The EU has condemned it. EU representatives have spoken about this being a, quote, new escalation, and also stressing that annexation is, and I quote, illegal. The UK has been particularly concerned about this over the past week or so. Obviously, Arab states have also been outspoken in their condemnation of what is happening, claiming that this is an attempt to project Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank. But I think the other thing to bear in mind here as well is that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have also expressed concerns about annexation, saying that annexation will not happen. And yet, if we look at what's happening on the ground, this is seemingly de facto annexation through the use of legal and political mechanisms to allow for the removal of Palestinians from land that they cannot seemingly prove that is theirs by virtue of the land registration processes.
Mitchell, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, let's not let the facts get in the way of an exciting debate on Al Jazeera. I mean, the fact of the matter is 2.8 million Palestinians live in areas A and B. That's the vast majority of Palestinians on the West Bank. So talk about not annexing the people. 200,000 of them, which is a small percentage, live in Area C. Now, again, don't let the facts confuse you. The Palestinian Authority started registering land in Area C. So the government of Israel has now put in ways that the land registry has changed, and the government can take over, can register certain lands. Meaning, I don't know where you get the jump from the annexation when even in the government decision and articles that have been written, this is a decades-long process in order to register the land, in order to find them, register them, and so forth. And the map that I saw had a lot of orange on it, which is all the areas that the Palestinian Authority has started to register in Area C. This is in violation of the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. Why did they start doing it? I don't know. Why did it have to be done? I don't know. But Israel came in and seems to have answered that so that there wouldn't be a land grab on the Palestinian side in Area C, which is under Israeli control.
Right. Well, Mitchell, I mean, 200,000 is a lot of people, but I just want to get a sense here from you, Mohammed, how this is all going to work. I mean, you've got Palestinians, some of whom have been living there for generations, but they may not be able to meet the exacting standards of the property ownership rights. How does it all work? What happens to them?
Before that, even, I mean, just one more remark before that. Talking about only 200 Palestinian people, aside from the fact that this is a huge number of Palestinians, the fact that there are only 200,000 is because of Israeli policies. We are talking as if we have started the conversation today. The Israeli occupation of the West Bank started in 1967. Palestinians are not being able to develop areas in the West Bank. It's not that the Palestinians can build towns, cities, or new neighborhoods in the West Bank. It's totally controlled by the Israeli military regime, and the Israeli military regime serves the Israeli settlement enterprise. The Israeli military regime doesn't serve the Palestinian interests in the West Bank, including in Area C, and that's why we see only a minority of Palestinians living in Area C. If Area C is transferred to the Palestinian Authority, as was anticipated under the Oslo Accords, of course, you will see a lot of development in that area, including for Palestinians, Palestinian businesses, Palestinian population, cities, towns, and what have you. But the fact that Israel has been controlling this and the ability of the Palestinians to actually function in Area C is almost zero under the Oslo agreements. And even just registering some of those lands by the Palestinian Authority to protect the ownership of the Palestinians, especially the privately owned lands in those areas, now is being used as a pretext by the Israeli government to retaliate in this move that we are talking about.
Yeah.
We have to remember the facts. The facts is that the Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza, more than 5 million Palestinians, under international law, they have the right for self-determination. And part of that right for self-determination is to control their own land and their own homeland. Israel exists in the 1948 borders, in the 1967 borders, inside the Green Line, under international law, under international decisions of the UN.
Yeah.
The Palestinians have that right, and part of that right is to control that territory, which is only 22% of historical Palestine, which the Palestinians were able or were willing to accept as part of a historical compromise with Israel and with the Zionist movement.
I'll come to you in a second, Mitchell, but I want to get to Simon and ask him, does this represent the ability for somebody's house to be sold from under their feet ultimately?
Well, it seems that way unless they are able to prove, and I guess there are very serious legal questions as to what prove means and in which court this is actually going to be tried in. And it's about being able to prove with the right documentation that the house belongs to you. If you are unable to do that, according to these new regulations, then the house can be taken from you, according to the idea that land can then be co-opted by the state. And I thought there was a very interesting turn of phrase from Mr. Barak when he referred to Israel taking over. And I thought that kind of captures a lot of what's going on here. It echoes many of the sentiments mentioned by members of Mr. Netanyahu's cabinet about preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state and reasserting Israeli control over Judea and Samaria. These are phrases that have been used by the likes of Bezalel Smotrich and others. So I think it's a worrying trend, and it's led to some Israelis even saying that, look, this is a tectonic shift in the way that Israel is dealing with the Palestinian territories. So it is a very worrying moment, and it's a moment that I think requires the international community to really stand up and say, look, we have said that settlement building is illegal. We have said that annexation is illegal and morally repugnant. So now we must do something about it.
Now, Mitchell, I mean, I was talking to a guest yesterday, and he likened this to the decree on the registration of Jewish property in 1938 in Germany, which paved the way for Jewish-owned assets to be confiscated or forced into a sale. What's different about this from that?
Well, that's a silly question. I'm not even going to go there. But what is interesting is that in areas A and B, where 2.8 million Palestinians are under the Palestinian Authority rule, that's 2.8 million Palestinians that have some form of self-determination more on the West Bank than on the East Bank, where you have millions of Palestinians that are under a Jordanian rule, also from 1967. How come they don't get a right to self-determination? I don't understand it. Meaning, and your linkage of Germany and the Holocaust and Nazi is totally
Mohammed, you have your turn.
Line, and it's a disgraceful thing. You want to talk about Judea and Samaria, West Bank, talk about it. You want to talk about bringing Germany and this, why don't you try and keep the debate to what we're talking about?
We're going to go to Mohammed. He was interrupting you.
Palestinians in Jordan, they also have the rights to self-determination. Palestinians in Jordan were driven out of Palestine. Palestinians in Jordan have the right to come back to Palestine. That's where they should exercise their self-determination. That's what international law says. By the way, I want to remind your respectful guest that only in July last year, or actually 2024, the highest court in the world, the highest judicial body in the world, the International Court of Justice, has given an advisory opinion saying exactly what we are saying now. Prior to these decisions, the court said that the occupation of Israel, the occupation of the Palestinian territories by Israel has become illegal under international law, and therefore Israel should stop its occupation within 6 months. Instead of doing that, Israel is actually doing more legal actions. Now it's moving into another phase of killing any hope, of killing and destroying the Oslo Accords, and killing any hope for the Palestinians to live in their homeland in dignity and freedom. And listen to this: Israel is not offering the Palestinian equality and dignity in one state. Israel is not saying, let's have one state between the river and the sea, and all citizens, all people living between the river and the sea should have equality and freedom and dignity, one person, one vote, because Israel doesn't have the courage to suggest that. But what Israel is doing is it's doing many things, but it's not this. It's doing annexation of the empty land.
Okay,
and the land is empty because of Israel, and the land is empty because of Israeli policies.
There's no one man, no vote in Jordan.
Okay, shouting over each other won't work.
Israel is driving the Palestinians
Mitchell and Mohammed.
Homeland outside of their ancestors.
Mohammed.
And it's driving them outside and looking for
the river,
places where they can.
Right, I'm going to bring in Simon here. Perhaps he can add some light to this rather than the heat. So, Simon, what's your take? Is the whole notion, as Bezalel Smotrich, Israel Katz, and Ben Gvir have said, that the idea of a Palestinian state is dead? And if so, what do they want to do with the Palestinians on the land they control?
Well, that's a very good question, and one that I fear you'll have to ask them. I think people can extrapolate from some of the remarks that have been made, but I certainly wouldn't want to do that right now. I think what we'd have to look at is the political and the legal machinations of what is being said and what is happening on the ground, not just in Area C with regard to the land rights, but also the expanding authority of the Israeli courts and the Israeli military in Areas A and B with regard to the claim of greater authority over decisions being made with regard to heritage sites and with regard to water rights. And these are superseding the indigenous municipal authorities that are supposedly overseeing those decision-making processes. And so that points to the broader expansion of Israeli control and Israeli rule in areas that it is not supposed to have this type of authority over. And so if that is the case, that perhaps points to the broader concerns expressed by the EU, expressed by previously ardent supporters of Israel, including Germany, for example, and indeed the United States. So I think it points to a very fractious moment for anyone hoping for a two-state solution, because right now, Israeli ministers are saying that the two-state solution is not viable because a Palestinian state is not viable.
To you, Mitchell, I mean, the thing is, what does Israel want to do with these lands that it's, I'm not going to use the word in annexation, but expanded its control into? Ultimately, what's the end game?
I wouldn't know that answer to that question, but I do know is that unlike many of the countries surrounding us, including Jordan, where you have millions of Palestinians living that can elect a majority in parliament, they're limited to about 35%, even though they make up about 80% of the population. We are going to have an election here in Israel in October. And Mr. Netanyahu may win again. He may lose again. We may have another leader. We'll have other parties. And there's 2 million citizens of Palestinian descent, Arab Israelis, Muslim Israelis for the most part, that will also vote in the election. And they could vote for people like Ahmed Tibi, Mr. Abbas. There are a number of Israelis of Palestinian descent, Israeli Arabs, that will be running. We have a democracy. We'll see what happens in the government. Mr. Mansour Abbas was in the government once before. So maybe he'll join the government again. He'll try and influence policy in Judea and Samaria and in the settlements, try and revive a two-state solution if that's relevant, try and bring the United States in. There are many, many opportunities. There's nothing that's dead. Everything is on the table. And I wouldn't interpret the Israeli cabinet move to kind of register lands at this point based on the Palestinian Authority violation of the Oslo Accords as a full throttle annexation, and we need to sound the alarm. That's not happening. There are people in this government that want to annex Judea and Samaria, and they've already been put on hold by President Bush and by Vice President Vance, and that's not going to happen. And a lot of the words coming out of the politicians today, it's electioneering. We have an election coming up in 9 months. So they're already gaining and they're saying certain things, but let's not take that too seriously. Let's wait to see what happens.
Mohammed, very quickly, could this spark off another intifada?
I hope not. Palestinians are not really fond of intifadas, but when people are really being suffocated and when people are really being driven literally out of their homeland, when people really see there is no hope for any future whatsoever, whether it's in, as I said, in one state with one man or one person, one vote, or in an independent Palestinian state where they can have at last, basic rights. Palestinians have been living under occupation since 1967. We are talking about generations of Palestinians who do not have the basic rights that you can think of. You might nod in your head, but you don't know what it means to live under occupation, not being able to move from one city to another, not being able to build your house, not being able to leave your country and come back, not being able to be a dignified human being in your homeland, being under settlement terror all the time. This is something that is not viable. And going and bragging about the Israeli democracy, as your guest has been trying to do, this is really besides the point. I mean, first of all, you cannot have democracy when a country is exercising occupation for an entire nation for 6 decades. I mean, this is to run away from the question.
Mohammed.
Israel is holding a very brutal occupation system and military regime for almost 5.5 million Palestinians for 60 years now. And to brag about Israel being democratic, this is
Mohammed.
really inconceivable.
I'm going to get to Simon now. You know, how much of this is guided by biblical thought, and how much of it is being used for political ends ultimately?
Yeah, there's certainly a good percentage of it that is drawn on from the Bible and from the Torah and other sort of religious texts. But I think it's certainly being deployed and used for political ends in the contemporary manifestation of the political world. I think there's a lot of it that is being selectively chosen, much like around the world, the contemporary debate around religion today is drawing selectively on textual sources. So I think there's certainly some of it, and it varies, of course, from person to person, party to party. But I think there's also the wider human dynamics that really must be factored into it here, and that regardless of text, scripture, or whatever it may be, there are very, very clear human implications for people living their lives in Palestine, in the West Bank, in areas A, B, and C, and in Israel and Gaza and across the region for that matter. We must not disregard the human cost of all of this, all of the very, very existential dynamics of people not being able to live the lives that they want to lead.
Thank you so much to our 3 guests there, Mohammad Dahleh, Barak, and Simon Mabon. And thank you for watching as well. You can see this program again anytime. Just simply visit our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Rishaad, Salamat, and the whole team right here in Doha. Bye for now.